Welcome to the first professional practice meeting of this semester. And today, as you all know by now, is a Isabella lecture series. And it is brought to you by Simlock Consulting Group, and Bob Koenigs and Margaret Cowan are sitting right there, and they are the ones who provided the refreshments. And the IOSA group, and of course, Christina Isabella. Now, Christina Isabella was sitting where you guys are sitting approximately 19, 20 years ago. She was a student here from Italy, and she wanted to leave a legacy and started the lecture series. And she's sending a letter every year to greet you, and the letter was enclosed in your program. So that's her welcome to the lecture series. And we had, if you see the program, you know, in the 19 years or 18 years, we had the privilege of having some great minds speak at our conference, at our lecture series, and today is no exception. And I will let Dr. Sherbano introduce our speaker today.
Thank you. And I can assure you that Beverly Kaye is a great mind and definitely a thought leader in the whole field of career systems, career development, retention, engagement, and mentoring. She's the founder, as you know, and CEO of Career Systems International. And that's been going for a number of years as well. And she has consulted and had her products and her career systems utilized by more than 600, well, by more than most of the Fortune 500 companies, and I think it's 60% of the 2,000 Fortune 500 companies. She's a prolific author. She'll tell you a little bit about her various books, but she started out with Love 'Em or Lose 'Em, and was really focusing then on the retention issues that were coming up more frequently than they had been before. Before, it had been more career systems and how are we going to plan our careers staying in an organization. Then she could see the trends and the changes, and it's come back sort of full circle now, because then it was not so much retaining employees, but then engagement, how to motivate them, how to get the most out of them, the productivity and really true commitment and engagement in the organization. And then utilizing mentors to help them develop their careers and learn practice by models and talking with real people in the organization who'd moved up and could have some savvy advice and coaching for them. The issue now has become full circle back to concern about retention of the people you really want to hold on to, and how do you go about doing that. So she started out with a book, the Love 'Em or Lose 'Em, and then she's had numbers of books. Up is not the only way. Getting people to think about a career portfolio that's lateral, different functions, different areas in different organizations and industries, which is clearly a major issue with people not being able to count on working for an organization their whole lives. Her latest book, I might say the Love 'Em, Don't Lose 'Em book, has sold over 600,000 copies and is in 25 languages. She's also requested to speak internationally, nationally, with a very full calendar. I don't know how she keeps doing it, but that's probably why she's so tiny. But she's a fabulous speaker, and then her consulting firm and she herself do a variety of work that she'll mention to you too, of what kind of consulting and training and development systems that they're working on right now. Her latest book is, wait a second, it's my page. I'm not going to read this whole thing to you. I've got it down. What is it? The leaders.
Oh, Learn Like a Leader.
Yeah, Learn Like a Leader is the latest. So I think that's just come out recently. Some of the corporations, just to let you know, more recently, have been organizations like American Express, Archer Daniels, Midland, Caterpillar, GE, Marriott International, McDonald's, Microsoft. She was just there the other day. Morrison Healthcare and WellPoint. But knowing that you've worked with most of the 500 Fortune companies, you can imagine how much face-to-face she's done in presentations as well as with her through her organization. She's a fabulous person, and it's my pleasure and honor to introduce her because she's again, decades friend of mine and colleague. And so we watched each other grow in our fields and in our professions. So she'll tell you more about that, and she will also explain what the title of her talk tonight is going to be, From Maps to Apps.
Thank you. Thank you. So, first of all, don't be so impressed, let me tell you. I'll tell you the real skinny about me. I'm a Jersey girl. You can hear it when I talk. You'll hear me, the twang, and you can never take the Jersey out of the girl. I've been living in LA for about the past maybe 35 years, but I'm still a Jersey girl. Anybody here from New Jersey? Because you get an immediate A. No? Okay. Oh, okay. So how many of you are in the doctoral track right now? And you're facing a dissertation. So I want to tell you, I proudly am probably the only person to graduate from UCLA with my doctorate, and I graduated with Marshall Goldsmith. But I am the only one to have failed my doctoral orals 3 times. And I'm very proud of it. I wasn't then, so those of you who are facing this, I just have to say that sitting here and realizing you're all in these programs, it all came back to me. So at UCLA, you defend your oral to your doctoral committee. And I thought I had picked the perfect committee, and I thought I had the perfect, dissertation designed and everything. And I was so sure of myself that I had a tape recorder. In those days, we had tape recorders, by the way, with a cassette. I was taping it for my parents. And I got attacked by the chair, a guy in the management school. And I'll tell you his name because he wrote some interesting books. His name is Sam Colbert. And he wrote recently a book called Beyond Bullshit. So you can imagine who he was after. And he said, Beverly, you have a flat side. And until you hone that flat side, you are not getting out of UCLA. So they turned down my dissertation topic, and they told me that I had to do something called phenomenological research, or grounded theory. Now, I had no idea what that was, but I knew I wasn't going to like it. And I read, it was Glaser and Strauss. I read it 3 times. I still had no idea what it was. And each time, and what it means is you study a phenomenon, and then you build a theory about the phenomenon. So I'm a Jersey girl. I move fast, talk fast, work fast. I'm not a theory builder. And I tried to come up with a theory, and each time I went back to the committee and I said, this is my theory. They, led by this Sam, said it can't be. Can't possibly hold all your data, start again. So I was very mature. And 3 times. By the 3rd time, what I did was, by the 3rd time, I hired someone to listen to me talk about what I was finding in this phenomenological research. And when I had a human being nodding, nodding and saying, say more about that, all of a sudden the theory grew. And all of a sudden I realized I had it. And they said, you've got it. What I didn't realize, I was going to put a contract out on Sam, but I couldn't find anybody to. But what I didn't realize was that it was going to form my career. It really was, because the theory that I developed back then, and that was in the 70s. I don't look that old, do I? No! The theory I developed back then became my terra firma, the ground I stand on. And I've built a company over the last 30 plus years, and that theory, and you're going to see it embedded in what I'm going to talk to you about, that theory is what I delivered always in new ways to companies, you know, on a global basis. And now I have an organization that's about 20 full-time people and 20 part-time people, and we do work in this career development area, meaning we train managers and we train employees to have an adult conversation, to talk about careers. And that is a big part of what I do, and it's grounded in this. The other part of what I do is very connected. It's around retention and engagement. And I'll tell you what makes me thrilled now, because I went through that tough recession that all of us who, you know, in this field went through. And it was hard. And I, who wrote a book on retention, had to let go of 1/3 of my full-time people. So you can imagine I'm a very emotional, can't you tell? Emotional person. I died over it. It was awful. But what we're seeing now is, and you'll see me talk about this, is if ever companies had better treat their people well, they better treat them well now. Because we're coming out of the recession, and people are going to have choices like never before, or just like before. And anyone who was mistreated, anyone who was misused, overused, underused, or abused is going to jump ship. So all of a sudden, retention's important, engagement is important, and happily for me, the biggest driver of employee satisfaction, employee engagement, and employee retention is career development. If I don't see opportunities in my organization, if I don't see chances for me, then I am out of here. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. And you need to know I'm used to talking to a corporate audience. I'm going to try to bring it back to faculty and students. How many faculty in the room? Good. I'll give you a couple tips for working with your wonderful students. And I want you to know I have used Alliant interns for many years. I think you are the best. I really do. So if you ever need references, I mean, you really are. I have had wonderful, tremendously wonderful interns and still do. So I want you to know I applaud your school. I applaud what you do, because whatever you do, you're turning out great, smart, wonderful people.
If I can just add, she's looking for an intern now in the next few months. So if you think you live anywhere near Sherman Oaks,
somebody nearby,
and would be willing to travel up there to work with her, let me know.
Okay, so I'm talking about a new career shift from MAPS to apps, and I'm going to suggest to you that the world we're living in is a VUCA world. Anybody hear that term before? VUCA world? Well, it's actually an old Army term. And a colleague of mine, Bob Johansson, who works for the Palo Alto Institute of the Future, picked up the word and is blowing it big. And he says a VUCA world is a world that is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And the bad news is it's only gonna get worse. The good news is we're learning how to get prepared so that we know how to operate in that volatility and in that complexity. And he's a great guy, and he wrote a book called, I want to get it right, Leaders Make the Future. And his name is Bob Johansson. It's a great book about competencies leaders need in the future. And he names these great new kind of words, new competencies. So check it out, Bob Johansson. The one thing he said recently, he said, you have to keep your eye on the future. And it's really hard to keep your eye on the future if you are deafened by the present. And I realized how clever that was and how many of us get deafened by the present. I, in my own organization, small consulting firm, I'm so like, what's going to happen this quarter? And I see corporate America, oh my gosh, this quarter. So you can't get deafened by the present and simultaneously have your eye on the future. And that is really critical. So when I've looked at organizations, I know that after layoffs, you've got this amazing group that stays. And I don't like the word survivor. So I've called them the kept-on workers. And I have an article on the kept-on workforce. If any of you want it, if you leave me your card and write kept on, I'll make sure I email it to you. But kept-on workers now, those workers that have survived all the ups and downs in corporate America, they're weary. They are settling in, but they're frustrated about the lack of advancement. They do not see how they're going to move up in the organization. They know they're in charge of the future. And let me tell you, all these mission statements and value statements in corporate America, we believe in our people, they are our future. And yet many of them don't do enough to help them be ready for that future. They want freedom and flexibility, but they say, well, I don't have the tools, I don't know how to do that. And I was sharing with Jeannie in an interview before this, before I started doing this work, I was a college student personnel dean. And I worked in schools that I never could have gotten into. I worked at Brandeis University, and then I came here to work at Pomona College in Claremont. And I watched these students think, if I am the brightest of the bright, I'm in an A school, and I do an A job, when I get out, there'll be an A line I stand in for an A career. Not so. Not so. And they didn't know what to do when it just didn't materialize. So I think they need tools and support. And one of the things I think that got me going in my own work is there are tools. And you can keep those tools simple. And one of the, I think I've come to learn it late in life, but the gift I think I have is how to make complex simple. Because managers in today's organizations, they don't want to be coaches, they don't want to be counselors, they don't want to be therapists. You give me a quick way to do it and I'll do it. But I got my cup runneth over as it is. How do you expect me to have the performance discussion and the career discussion and all of that? So my goal with my company has always been, how do you make it simple? And you'll see how I've simplified it. And they understand they're responsible for their career, but they have serious doubts about their ability to act. So I'll give you one more point of background. So when I look at, am I doing this right? Oh, giving it away, giving it away, giving it away. Whoop, 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 whoop. Ah, okay, there. So, always when consultants go in to sell corporate America, you better have a business case. You better have the ROI, is that right? You better have your numbers right. You better say, here's how this is going to help you. Here's how it ties to a business need you have. And when I step back and look at, well, why do companies call us in, my organization? I'd say it fits with one of those things. It's either we really want to be attractive to those Gen Yers out there. We want to pull them in. We want a world-class team. How do we do it? You better have a development culture alive and well in your organization. It's building a talent pipeline. It's reinforcing your brand. If you want to be seen as a cool place to work, you better really be a cool place to work. Because people now can find out whether you are cool or not. There's all the LinkedIn, all those things, Vault.com. And I was last week with Microsoft. And, cool place to work. You know what? I made a terrible mistake. I said in front of 300 people in a Microsoft audience that if they wanted the answer to something, they had to Google it. I thought I would die. And you know, of course I know it's Bing. Of course I know. I did my homework. They were, I mean, I was like turning color, and I had my salesperson in the audience. She was like slinking under the, you know, but they were sweet to me. They were sweet to me. Anyway, but it is about brand. It is about flexibility. It's all these things. It's about how do I get employees to stand up for what they want and ask for what they want instead of having a manager read their minds. And then finally, it's about engaging and retaining talent. So I said to you before, the big driver for engaging and retaining talent, and I'll bet you it's true for all of you, is about what about my career? What are my opportunities here? So the good news is that expansion follows recession. It usually lasts longer. It changes the competitive landscape, and there are new winners and new losers. And when I'm facing a corporate audience, I'll say to them, and where will you fall? Will you be a winner or will you be a loser? So the setup that I want to give you, and I'm going to have you do some work on this, is I want to ask you this question. And this is we've been working for the last 5 years to figure out how do we reinvent our career work. That's had a shelf life of like 30 years. And we had many, many false starts and stops, and we finally got it. And it is about, are you self-powered or are you powered by others? And does it matter? And let me tell you, I think it really does. I think organizations of the 21st century are going to be fueled by self-power, your power, if in fact you claim it and you take it. So I think it matters a lot, and the way that I am now talking about it is I'm suggesting that you all, and all of those out there in jobs, are going to have to move their career from thinking it's a map to apps. Meaning, years ago when I started in this work, there was real career paths. I mean, you would have these lines drawn on a sheet, and if you checked off these 3 experiences or jobs you held, and you checked off these courses you took, and you did it all, you should be ready to become BLOPO, whatever BLOPO was. And still, organizations are spending a ton of money doing pathing. And I'm not saying it's bad. In fact, when a company really, really wants it, I have a colleague who does it beautifully. So if you need it at Qualcomm, I'll give you her name. But what I believe is that the path is an implied promise. And no matter how much I tell you, it's not a promise, not a promise. You know, you can't check these things off and get this. I can't promise you that. People think it is. And then they say, well, I did all these things. So where's my position? So I think we need apps. And apps are fast, fluid, flexible, and fickle. And I think we need apps, in fact, to design our careers instead of maps. So what I'm going to do with you is I'm going to tell you about the apps, but first I'm going to ask you 5 questions. So take out a sheet of paper, write down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I got 5 questions. In faculty, you have to do these too. And I'm going to ask you questions, and I'm going to give you 10 seconds to think about the answer, like life. And I want you to jot it down. I'm not going to tell you why I'm asking them at all yet, but we'll get there. So, question number 1. What is one trend out there that I've been reading about, looking at, seeing, that's going to affect the way I can be a professional, you know, in my work? What's going to change this whole world? I don't know, most of you are in organizational psychology, am I right? And some from other areas. What's going to change? What's a trend that's going to make org psych different when I go out there to do my work? What's a trend? Just one trend that's going to hit. Okay? Question number 2. Complete this sentence. Modesty aside, when I really think about it, my greatest strength is my ability to do what? What's the thing, the capability that you take from job to job, you take it into your classroom, you take it into your internships, that's yours? An ability, a skill, a something. Okay? Question number 3. Get this scene. You're sitting with a couple colleagues. Either you're working on a project, in your school work, or you're working on a project in the jobs you have. And it's your project and your colleagues are there to meet with you about it. And you get a telephone call. And you have to step out of the room just for 2 minutes to take that call. And your colleagues are left, with nothing to do for 2 or 3 minutes. So they start to talk about you. So I want to know, what are 2 things your peers or colleagues might say about you when you're not in the room? What might your peers or colleagues... Now, don't cop out and say, they'd say, I hope it's not a serious phone call. I hope our kids are okay. No, bullshit. I want you... They're talking about you as a professional. What do they say about you? 2 things. Okay. Question number 4. So just give me this clue. How many of you are working part-time jobs, something in the job world? I don't know how to phrase this. Okay. And how many of you are full-time students? Raise your hands. Okay, about half now. So here's the question. So what I want to, people in the job world, I want to know if I had a magic wand and I could tap your desk at work and I could make disappear the part of your job you hate the most, giving you 20% more time to do what you love the most, what would you do? And those of you full-time students, think about, of all the classes you're taking and all the projects you're doing, which piece of work, which class, which thing do you love the most right now? Could you spend more time on if you only had it? That's the question. And then lastly, I want you to imagine this. Imagine you are walking into a drugstore. This is a drugstore of the future. And one of the aisles is lined with skill pills. And you can walk down the aisle with your basket and you can pluck any skill pill off the shelf. Pop it in your basket, take it home, take it for a week, and the skill is yours. No work, no sweat, no fuss. What skill pill would you pick off that drugstore shelf that you think would help you be the professional that you really want to be? If it was that easy. And if you're lucky, I'll give you the address of the drugstore. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to circle the question that was the hardest for you to answer of the 5. Which was the hardest for you to answer? Circle it. Turn to someone next to you and tell them which one was the hardest and why. Okay? So you can be in 3s or 2s, so you'll have to turn around. Which question of the 5 was the hardest and why? Okay, go. Okay, let me have you back again. So, I'm curious. I'm just going to ask you to raise your hand. How many said the first question was the hardest? Raise your hand. The first question. Okay. How many said the second question was the hardest? The one about your skill. How many thought the third question, what do your peers say when you're not? How many thought the fourth was the hardest? And how many thought the fifth was the hardest? The skill pill one. Okay. So I'm going to tell you what these apps mean. And you now have gone through the quickest career development course ever. Because the 5 questions I asked you are the 5 apps that you really need to get to understand for the rest of your careers. And here's what they stand for. The first app is about change. I said to you, what's a trend? What's a change out there? How will it affect you? You had better be up to date on how your professions are changing, how jobs are changing, how the industry you go into is changing, how all of that is changing in a global economy. Because any of those changes, if you're not watchful, can knock you right off. And secondly, and I'm going to talk all about these at length too, you better understand what you're passionate about. Yes, you got to know your skills, and I asked you a skill question. And you got to know what you value, but you had better know what you truly interests you. Thirdly, you better know your reputation with peers, as well as people you interface with, as well as with your boss, as well as with those who will work for you, all of that. And you had better know that you form a reputation instantly. And the more you get what it is, the easier chance you have of changing it. You better know what options are out there. So when I said in a way, what do you love the most? It's a way of asking you, what do you want to really build? If you can't move in an organization, how do you grow right where you are? And that's the essence of that one. And finally, the action one is, what's a step you would take to get better at what you need to get better at? And I asked it around skill pills just to give you some fun, but I was really asking you, what do you need to really, get better at? If you could have a skill pill. And finally, and I'm going to talk about this, what's a way you can get coaching around your career? How do you figure out the coaching moments? So what I'm going to do is go through all of these, and just before I do, I'll tell you the way I talk to a corporate audience about what people want is the following. And it's interesting, as I talk about these wants, I'm going to ask you which one of those you all want the most at the end, just to test this. So here's what I say. I say it's to corporate leaders, look, all the generations want these 5 things. Generation Y, millennials, might be asking for it louder than anyone else, but all the generations want this. They want you to clue them in to what's going down. How are things changing? What's the reorg going to mean? Who's coming in? What's the restructuring going to mean? Clue me in. They want to know, will you use the breadth of my skills? Like, yeah, I come in for this position and it requires these 4 skills, but boy, I got a lot more to offer. Are you going to take advantage of this lot more that I have? Will you provide me with ongoing feedback? And it's like, I get feedback every 12 seconds from the video game I play, Will you let me know how I'm doing? Not just once a year at performance appraisal time, but always, because I want to grow and I want to learn. Will you explore multiple avenues for my career growth? I know I'm not going to come in and be president tomorrow, but are there different ways I can grow in this organization? If up is blocked, it's okay. can I still grow? And then, will you ensure that you keep me employable? Will you ensure my continued learning? So I'm really curious with this group in particular. If you had to choose just one that you'd say, I really want that. When I go out there, when I finish the doctorate, finish them, everything, this is what I really expect from the company I join. How many would say it's number one is the most important? How many would say it's number two is the most important? Okay, good. I think that's really important. How many would say number three is the most important? How many would say number four is the most important? A lot of you. Okay. How many would say number five? A lot of you. Okay. I'm going to tell corporate America. That's what you want. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk to you about each of these. And the first app is a change app. And it is all about how do I evaluate the changes affecting my career. And what I've often say to a corporate audience is if you don't, this is what happens. 2 weeks ago, he might have been your top whatever. 1 week ago, he resigned. And what I often say to managers and organizations is, and if you're clueless that he ever even was thinking about it, shame on you. If you didn't see the light go out of his eyes, if you didn't see that he was pulling back on what he put out, and you did nothing about it, shame on you. You know, in my work in retention and engagement, I talk about, and I'll ask you this, when do you think most managers say the words, what can I do to keep you? Right, when there's 1 foot out the door. At the exit interview, what can I do to keep you? So the brilliant thing, like duh, we said in Love 'Em or Lose 'Em is, why not do stay interviews? Why not say to people, I don't want to lose you. How can I keep you? Why not ask that question multiple times? And you know what managers say? Well, gee, if I ask the question, what can I do to keep you? And the answer is money, and I can't give it, I'm stuck. And I say, no, 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 you're not. You say the truth. I can't deliver on that right now. But I want to know what else really matters to you. Because, boy, I don't want to lose you on my team. And I challenge them and I say, you ask the what else question 3 times and you will get 5 or 6 things that you can influence. So do not ask it. That's the stay interview. So I think that, and you know, and so I was thinking about this coming here. Students, so faculty, your students need this. And students, you need all of this, not just when you join the workforce or whatever, but as students. You need to know what's changing. You need to have candid discussions with your professors, with one another, about, you know, what's happening. And you need exposure to the key information that you should be reading to really stay up on what's happening in this whole world of careers and world of choice. Make sense? So if you're not sure what journal, what you should be reading, ask each other. You know, so let me just ask you right now. So what do you read to make sure you're exposed to the right information about the world of org psych? Is that the right thing to say? Of org psych. What do you read? Anybody, call it out.
Journal of Applied Psychology.
Journal of Applied, very good. Journal of Applied Psychology, very good. What else do you read?
Consulting psychology.
Consulting psychology, very good. What else do you read? Others. I'll name some. Harvard Business Review. Great. It's gotten better than it ever has been, I think. More readable than it ever has been. And I'll tell you something else that's free. 3 journals. One called Talent Management, one called Diversity Executive, and one called Chief Learning Officer, CLO. 3 journals put out by Media Tech. They put it out through you know, they're available on free through email. 3 great magazines. So if all of you in the org psych world, those 3 connect, and they'll tell you what's going on in the corporate world around all of this. So the second one, choose roles that interest you. And what's critical about that is that you're always thinking about opportunities inside your organization if you're in one. Otherwise, other people are going to find opportunities for you. And what I know that employees need is they need these kind of conversations. And down below it says dialogue about skills, values, and interests. You know what, I used to think all three were critical. And I used to put it out as an equilateral triangle. Now if you said to me, which one do you think is absolutely the most critical? I'd say interests. You know why? I could train you in a skill. You know, I could put you, it's hard in an organization where your values aren't met. If your values are met home and other places, you could survive. But if you're not interested in what you're doing, if the passion isn't there, I can't train you in passion. So that's what I'm beginning to realize is the most important. So here's the question for you on this. I want you to answer it to one another. Question is, when was the last time you said, I love what I do? When was the last time you said, and if your answer is, oh geez, good, that's a hint. When was the last time you said, you know, I love what I do? If you're a full-time student, when did you say it about a course you were taking? If you're doing some work now, when was the last time? If you can't think of it, there's a clue for your clue bag. Okay? Turn to each other, answer that question, go. Okay, let me get you back again. I love to hear the buzz in the room. So, for those of you who might manage others, or those of you who move into managing, it's a really important, simple question to ask. When was the last time you said, I love my job? What were you doing? What were you thinking? Who were you with? And if the employee's eyes glaze over, you know you're losing someone. They're getting disengaged. You know, in my engagement work, I say there's physical engagement, meaning, you know, I stay and I'm turned on. I stay, and then there's psychological engagement. I stay and I'm really tuned in. And if a person is disengaged, meaning they quit and they stay, it's the worst for the organization. And that's happening a lot. People are quitting and staying. And that's not what we want. We want employees who are really engaged and turned on. So the next one is reputation. And a lot of you said, oh, that was a hard one. And let me tell you, it is critical that you understand your rep in the organization. Because based on your rep, people will invite you to join their team. And based on your rep, you'll be able to get others to join your team. So do you even know what it is? Do you know how you're seen by your fellow students? This is what I think employees need. I think as students, you need this too. And if it doesn't come to you, you need to go after it and ask for it. And you know one of the best ways of asking for it? 3 questions. You say, what could I do more of? What should I be doing less of? And what might I continue doing to deliver better service, better work, better whatever it is? More of, less of, and continue. And the more you ask that of people around you, the more you'll begin to get input. And, you know, you'll begin to understand where you might have to brush up on that reputation. It used to be a saying that if one person calls you a horse, don't worry about it. If 2 people call you a horse, well, think about it. If 3 people call you a horse, go out and buy a saddle. You know, so it's that kind. And it is that you play to a career audience. You play always to it. You walk into a room and you play to an audience. And if you don't think that's so, you'll find out. You'll find out when in fact you don't get what you want to get because of something you said or didn't say or did or didn't do that someone took in and formed a picture of you that maybe isn't so. So reputation is critical. Options, very important. And you know, I've talked about that for a very long time, you know, about that you have to look at multiple options. And I think you have to look at opportunities very carefully. And I think managers in today's organization, they have to know how their people want to grow. I think the faculty has to ask students, how do you want to grow? What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? What's attractive to you about that? All of those kinds of questions. And I think what employees need, and I think it is true for students, what is it? What are my choices? And maybe the most important letter in the word choices is the S on the end of the word. Multiple choices. How do I think at multiple choices? And the first book I wrote, Up Is Not the Only Way, said that everybody should think about what's available to me laterally, what's available to me if I stay right where I am, how do I move vertically, what might I explore, what might I move down to get across into something else, and if I were to go, where would I go? What other companies attract me? So of all of those, I think the most important is enrichment. So I'm going to give you a quick exercise on how to get rich quick. Okay? So those of you who have jobs, I want you to think, I'm going to put some words, and I want you to think of a way, a word that captures you, that you could say, I could do that. And those of you full-time students, you can use the same kind of example. And I want you to watch for a word that captures you, like. What could you broaden that you already like doing, and if you broadened it a little bit more, you'd get more credit, more attention. What could you broaden? What could you contract with someone else maybe to learn or teach or do so that you get more of what you want, better at what you are doing? What could you enhance? What could you build? What could you refresh, upgrade, reconsider, retool, deepen, demonstrate, specialize in, reboot, test, sharpen, expand, or maybe restore? Pick one of those words, turn to your partner and say, like for me, I could really deepen my knowledge of social media. I do not like tweeting. I do not like any of that. I do not have time for it. But I better deepen it. Because in my field, really, really important for others to know about what we do in my company, etc. So social media, whether I like it or not, I better deepen my knowledge of it. That's what I mean. Okay? Pick a word, turn to your neighbor, and go. Okay, let me have you back again. Great! Did you have a word? Which word?
We went through a few, but deepen.
Deepen, okay. What are you going to deepen?
Business acumen. So tie the words.
Good. Very important. Very important. Okay, so. Good. Did you get rich? Yeah. Okay. One more. Creating actions that keep you satisfied and contributing. So it's great to know, you gotta do. Stephen Covey said, to know and not to do is not to know. And I cannot tell you the number of organizations that I go into that are into knowing, and they think knowing is doing. So they do surveys, and they analyze the surveys, and they form teams to work on the surveys where they're lowest and to benchmark best practices and they think that's doing. That is not doing, that is just knowing. So I say to my clients, go to your CEO and say, give me all the money for the next survey. They're very expensive. Give it to me, and I'll prophesize the lowest things on the next survey, and you probably could. They're going to be low in communication, they're going to be low in career development, and give me the money, and I'll make something happen. But no one's taken me up on that yet. So what I think employees need is they need ideas, they need access to key people, they need resources. And you know, we have in the learning and development world this 70-20-10 kind of urban myth, but I think it's a lot of truth to it, that 70% the way you learn is through experience. 20% is through exposure, and 10% is through education. Now, I'm not sure those are the right numbers, and here we are in an educational institution. I would say it's reversed for you, but it is, when you learn on the job, it's critical. The experiences you have, etc., are critical. So you have the 5 apps. I want to mention one more, and it is a coaching app. And here's where we're trying something new in the work we're doing. We're beginning to say to organizations, maybe it isn't the manager who should be the career coach for their employees. Maybe the manager is just one of a number of career coaches, and maybe really coaches are your own peers and people in your network and people in LinkedIn and people on Facebook who really know you, and maybe it's anyone, anytime, any place. So what we're beginning to do with our work is teach peers to coach peers, so that they're not waiting for on high from their manager. And I think it's going to be probably a combination of both those things. But I think the 3 things we need to give and we need to get. Appreciation. Here's what I see you doing, that's so great. I think we need to advocate for one another. I know so-and-so, I'm going to put your name in for that. And we need to activate. Why don't you try this? It worked for me. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to turn back to the partner you just had, and I want you to tell them one thing you appreciate about them, just from your brief conversations you had tonight. Okay? Go. Partner, high five. Okay. So here's the question that I want you to leave here thinking about. How will you self-power your career now, while you're here at this wonderful school, and in the future, when you join that corporate America or begin to do what it is you're planning to do? Will you be self-powered, or will you be one of those who wait to be powered by others? So I think that what we're trying to do in organizations is to say, by looking after yourself, you look after the company. You know, by building individual capacity, you build organization capacity. And often at the end of a talk that I might give, I might say to leaders in an organization, wouldn't this be a win-win? Like, imagine if everybody in this organization was on top of change, really on top of it. You know, and not waiting for someone to tell them, here's how we're going to change. What if everyone knew what interested them and what they were good at and what they had to get better at? What if everybody knew what their rep was and how to market that reputation as an asset? What if everybody had options that enrich them and energize them? And what if everybody knew what actions they could take, and if everybody helped one another, in fact, give and get coaching, so that in fact they got where they wanted to in their career? Maybe then you could take kind of a negative, scary VUCA world and turn it into a positive VUCA world, and move from volatility to vision, from uncertainty to understanding, from complexity to clarity, and from ambiguity to agility. So the note I want to end on is a message that we try to give to employees inside of organizations. And I'm going to read you a poem that kind of captures it. And it's from Love It, Don't Leave It. And it's for all of you. And it's called, Are You Waiting? Are you waiting for your boss to go? Or for the economy to not be so slow? Are you waiting for someone to bring fun to your work? Or for that colleague to stop being a jerk? Are you waiting for HR to chart your career? Or for a leader to calm that downsizing fear? Are you waiting for an assignment that's exciting to do? Or for your manager to make work better for you? Are you waiting for your organization to really care? Well, guess what? Waiting simply will not get you there. And with that, I thank you.